Well, understanding the value of early childhood investment is something our first guest today is noted for. Born and raised in western Oklahoma, James Heckman is a noted scholar and winner of the 2000 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. I had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Heckman to talk more about the economic return on early childhood investment. We often speak about child care as a social issue, but is it also an economic issue?
Definitely. It's an economic issue because what we've come to understand is that skills are the central core of the modern economy. We ask, what is a major contributor to productivity? Well, we know that capital goods are important, we know machines and so forth, but people are important too, and skilled people. And so education is at the heart of the modern economy. And what's at the start of education? A good start. So in that sense, we know, because of the economics of the issue, that there's a very powerful argument that we made for investing in early childhood, because it starts the process, which is a dynamic process, where skills beget skills, where motivation begets motivation. And with children get properly started on a trajectory of success, they become very successful, complete school, go on, graduate college, not drop out of high school, and become skilled participants in the modern economy. So when we study this on a purely economic basis, we see a very high economic rate of return, a return that's higher than what you get in conventional investments in the stock market over the last, forget the last 10 months or so, but if you look at the stock market between 1945 and say 2008, the average rate of return is about 5.8%, 6% on equity, just holding a stock and just getting the capital gains, all the appreciations, dividend streams. If you look at what the rate of return is for a child, investment in a child, an early years investment, what you find is a rate of return that's between 6 and 10% for both boys and girls. 6 and 10% per year, each year, the rest of your life. That's much higher than most passbook savings, much higher than what you get from a stock.
So essentially what we're talking about is workforce development.
Well, you're talking about workforce development, but you're also talking about other aspects. It's not just, it's development, it's enhancing the productivity, it's avoiding other drains on society as well, though. So for example, another benefit of the program would be reduced crime. And reduced crime, reduced burden on the schools to remediate early disadvantage. And so on an economic basis, you have those additional factors besides workforce development. But yes, it's workforce development as a primary output, but as well, reduced crime is a huge benefit.
Increasingly, we're learning that we live in a very competitive global economy. How do we stack up compared to other countries?
Well, we have slipped, there's no question about it. 50 years ago, the American educational system was the marvel of the world. We had one of the most highly educated workforces in the world. And what's happened is that we have no longer have that distinction by any means. We're way behind other countries. And the level of literacy and the level of sort of disadvantage at the bottom part of the distribution has actually been increasing. So we actually find that more than 20% of all Americans who are in the workforce or eligible to be in the workforce, say over age 16, say to 16 to 65, about 20% of those workers or potential workers don't have the literacy to understand the instructions on a bottle of pills. So you were to say, don't take a pill once a day, don't take more, or do some kind of not so complicated indication of how to handle the medication. 20% fail to have that knowledge. And that's just the tip-off of a very large problem, which is suggesting that we have a growing group of people. We're in a funny situation in America right now. A greater proportion of all Americans who are, say, 15 to 25 are going to college than ever before, okay? But at the same time, a greater proportion is dropping out of high school. So we actually are seeing society is dividing into two parts. And that bottom half is actually creating a greater burden on society. And this is not illegals coming in from Mexico with low levels of education. I'm talking about people born in the United States, raised in the United States, and so forth. So what you're seeing is a very productive top end of the distribution, which is creating wealth, producing a lot of ideas. And then you have a bottom end, which is actually withdrawing from society, not participating, and actually, if anything, creating a drain on society through drugs, through basically not working, and through non-active participation in school, and a lot of other aspects of a social life. So we're getting a polarizing society. So yes, there's an economic benefit. yes, there's also a social benefit.
Let me give you a figure here in Oklahoma. Of ninth graders, only 18% 6 years later have completed secondary education. They're in their second year of college or some type of skills training. Is that a warning flag for our state?
It's a warning in the sense that these people who are graduating or not graduating are going to create a burden for themselves and the rest of society. Well, I mean, we see what's happened. I mean, the world is shifting towards higher level of education. Demand for skills has increased. There's no question about it. And in a situation where we have a global competitiveness, where large pools of unskilled labor are entering the workforce, the only way Americans can remain competitive is by being skilled, doing things that other people can't do. That requires education. Lots of people can do manual labor, whether it's in Vietnam, whether it's in southern China. What we have done traditionally, and we need to move into much more, is specialization in the high-end tasks, the kind of things that uniquely are American, the ability to innovate, to create, and to produce good new ideas, and to respond flexibly to changing challenges. So I think this figure looks bad from the point of view of producing a workforce that's competitive and producing something that actually is going to lead to long-term economic success.
Final question. How do we get there?
Well, I think there are a number of programs and plans that are put in place. I mean, to somebody walking into this area cold, there's always a bewildering array of plans and policies that gets to be a little bit crazy, maybe, for people to look at. I think what we've come to understand, though, is an early start plays a very important role. So when we start, for example, in years 0 to 3 even, we recognize that the child's brain and the child's whole personality is really fundamentally can be shaped in a productive way. Now, by shaped, I don't mean you build a sort of a uniform person and a template that's going to be like robots off of a factory. Not at all. But I think what we can do is challenge and supplement the kind of skills that children bring, even starting at birth. Their socio-emotional skills, and of course their academic skills. Look, in rich environments, in wealthy families, most wealthy families, not all, but in most wealthy families, what you have is a structure where children are being bathed in all kinds of supplements. Parents are taking the kids to museums. Parents are speaking to the kids. The verbal supplements that they get are enormous. Disadvantaged kids don't get that. So what happens is you start the cycle of disadvantage very early on. In many cases, by the time a kid enters grade school, the disadvantage compared to the advantage have such huge gaps that it's impossible to ask the school system alone to make up for these. So we have to think of a life cycle plan where we target different groups within the life cycle. We target different groups that have different susceptibilities and with different strategies at different stages of life. That's the part that's emerging for really understanding how we create people.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.